Let's see what it's doing. Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody. This is the editorial team from Crypto Trader News, and we are live streaming today to bring some news, kind of hang out and see what's going on. With us today, we have Alan and the bearded one, Matthew, and I am Meredith. And who wants to launch this thing? Hey, Matt, you have a guest.
Yeah, as soon as you went live, she jumped up here like she was wanting the camera, and that's as I told you guys, I'm a Batman freak, and this is Harley Quinn.
Hello, Harley Quinn.
She had a mask when she was born, but she grew out of it. Anyway, Tony and Dennis couldn't be with us this morning. They had some other things going on.
Yes, and they gave us the tools.
Boy, is that a mistake or what?
What were they thinking?
Like letting the lunatics run the asylum. I apologize if y'all can hear my dogs. They have decided it's playtime as soon as we went live. But we got some cool things that we want to discuss this morning. Alan has pulled up some breaking news this morning, and I think Meredith has it set so we can share with you guys. A lot of good changes and some questionable things going on in our little corner of the world.
Yeah. Alan, do you want to launch us with the news about Google? What's going on with them?
Yeah, okay, so one of the things, one of the trends is that more and more of these corporations are entering into banking in some form or fashion, right? So Uber, like 2 weeks ago, launched or announced their line of thought in going into Uber Money. Now we have another tech giant, Google, stepping into banking. They will be offering checking accounts to Google users pretty soon. So that's a pretty big deal. So more and more technology companies are stepping into banking. And we saw how Apple with partner with Goldman to launch the Apple Card, and so it seems that one continuous trend. Oh, and then finally, Facebook launched Facebook Pay yesterday, so that's a pretty big deal. So it seems that if you are running out of ways, running out of innovation, launch a banking service.
Yeah, and one thing you mentioned in Apple and Goldman Sachs, I did see an article yesterday or the day before where New York regulators are now investigating that whole thing.
Right, yeah, they were investigating the Apple Card and Goldman's algorithms because they said that it might have a gender bias, but they're still looking into that. And yeah.
Well, there's a whole thing about the algorithms and AI, and that they're inherently biased against women, and it just I had the thought, guys, another most of these AIs have been programmed by guys, and so did somebody do this just not thinking, and just going by nature? Is this something that was done on purpose, or is the AI just freaking biased inherently? Because I saw the one case where the husband and wife applied, and he got like an incredible line of credit, and then even though they are joint account, same credit line, same credit rating, hers was way lower, and
right, 3 times less.
Yeah, and so then they're Apple's saying, well, it's our algorithm. Well, or Goldman Sachs was saying it's the algorithm. Those kind of things are huge red marks against these kind of things. I mean, because even just as a regular consumer, not being a female, what other inconsistencies or what other bias are going to automatically be in those systems?
Right. Yeah. That's an interesting point, and that's the whole idea is Well, being able to utilize AI with blockchain and these other technologies, be able to improve these issues. And the whole idea is it becomes more and more data oriented over time, right? So the technology is supposed to be better. Technology will get better only as the data sets improve, because all you're doing is feeding them data sets and they churn out your whatever whatever you expect them to do from your criteria and the data input. So the question is, how do you how do you regulate? How do you self-regulate as a tech company moving into these utilizing the tools of AI and blockchain now? Because that's the for transparency and stuff like that.
Right. And granted, yes, we want automation as much as possible. I mean, that's one reason why so many of us love crypto is because we can do our stuff, our international transactions within minutes instead of hours, and we can do it with lower fees. But when you're looking at finances and you're dealing with mainstream banks and these big companies like Facebook, Apple, and Google, in my opinion, yes, automate that stuff as much as you can, but you still have to have that human check system in there, even if you're only auditing, every day, so many different accounts. Just getting that little tidbits of information, you know what I mean? That, can't think of the word I'm trying to think of, the sampling, just to make sure that these things are going right. And leaving it all up to AI and programming, in my opinion, at this early stage, is a vast mistake.
It's interesting because with like these leaders in the crypto space, how we're making it is everything's automated. Like you can deposit ETH, Ethereum into DAI, and you can go ahead and borrow DAI, and that happens. You input it. I mean, it's interesting. So, like, the thing is, automation is the major thing, because you want to, as a corporation, you want to go ahead and do cost efficiencies. You want to make it as simple as possible for yourself and ideally for your consumers. So it's like automation with the cryptocurrencies even is only going to increase further and further. And yeah, that's why we're seeing the push from. This leads me to our next point, which is that's why we're seeing the push from the central banks now. People's Bank of China, Tunisia, France just recently announced that they're looking into their central bank just starting to look at digitization of their central banking processes. Then third, the European Central Bank this past like Sunday or Saturday, started saying that they started appointing some people to the initiative of digitizing their central banking process. So this is like slowly starting to accelerate this payment thing across from the heart of these central banks to across the board. Even these old stodgy organizations that have been around for a while are now starting to look like, hey, we have to start paying attention, and they're going to accelerate this process. Yeah, Tencent just recently launched a virtual bank, and I'm still digging into how a virtual bank differs from an online checking account or online savings account. But more and more of these companies are rolling out, virtual, digital, and so across the board, from private sector to the public sector to independent organizations like the central banks, they're stepping it up significantly. Of
So
course.
here's my question for you, though. Okay, so I think we're all kind of old enough to know when cash was king, and there was a major pushback when with the banking when the debit card came out. I remember when I was younger, my father was like, "What is this? Nobody's ever going to use this plastic card," and blah blah blah. What does this mean? Where I want my money,
Right.
And we gradually adopted that. So now it's almost like, okay, everybody uses a debit card. Very rarely might we carry any amount of cash with us. I still do. I'm kind of old school, but So now it's the debit card. The next step, I guess, the next generation would be this digitizing. And so we look at cryptocurrency as that.
Right.
And it kind of segues into the article that I found from Bloomberg about, asking, is blockchain dead? Because digitizing doesn't necessarily mean you have to be on the blockchain. It just means that we're using algorithms and protocols and zeros and ones to move our money around. And why use a debit card when you have a digital wallet now? So it doesn't necessarily have to be blockchain. So I'm kind of curious what you guys think about that.
Well, I
So
think
one point is interesting is that cash was king, but cash is still king in countries like Japan. So I think you made a good point in that you still carry cash around. I've experienced that at sometimes whenever I'm traveling or just like moving around locally, my cards might not work even if everything's all right. So if I'm traveling, I want to make sure that I'm carrying some form of cash, just in case I run into issues with a credit card processing machine or whatever, right? So uh, I think it's like the privacy concern, intrusion, all tracking. Cash still will have to play a key role moving forward. Even in a digital era, right? You're gonna have to have some equivalent form of cash to where you, as a consumer, can continue to transact as you would with cash in some form or fashion. Then, second, you're right. The blockchain, how it's going to be integrated, will have to vary. But I believe more like the bank that Tencent is launching, they are planning on using a portion of the blockchain to go ahead and conduct verification and a few other key aspects. So each new banking entity might not, as you're seeing with these new fintech players like Square, PayPal, who else? A variety of these new banking entities, Robinhood, or where they're adding on savings accounts or a Betterment, Wealthfront. They're not. They're forms of banking in some form or fashion to where they provide some services from investing to cash account or savings. So all these players aren't using blockchain or yet, but a couple of the ones that are rolling out these days, like I said, the Tencent virtual bank, Google, they did not say anything about using blockchain. So yeah, the blockchain is not necessarily an integral feature or a technology in these in all operations, but I think that it's going to continuously be integrated over time because of potential efficiencies that it will bring to the table. Efficiencies, transparency, and also security that it will bring to the table.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Bloomberg article asking is blockchain dead? I think that's crazy. There's no way in the world that blockchain is dead. The promises and possibilities of the technology are just too numerous for it to be dead. Now, do I think that the landscape is going to look completely different a few years from now? Yes, I do. I think we're going to see the battle of the big ones. Bitcoin, Ether, and all the rest. And 5 years from now, 10 years from now, there's not going to be all these altcoins. We're going to have the main ones that, like Dennis is always talking about, that bring value to the world, that give something to consumers, that give something to businesses. And we all know that blockchain and smart contracts and distributed ledgers all have that great freaking ability to do a lot going forward. And banks, I mean, just look at how much has happened in the last couple of weeks. Sure, not all of it is blockchain related, but they are seeing the writing on the wall. that their old way of doing things is going to become obsolete. Or maybe not obsolete, but it is going to be on the back burner. Yeah, I'm just like Alan and Meredith, where I think that we'll always have the need for hard currency in some shape. But we're going to see more of the medical field using blockchain for HIPAA requirements. We're going to start seeing the legal field using blockchain and smart contracts a ton more. And so is blockchain dead? No, it's never going to die. It's here to stay. In fact, I would argue that it's kind of in a cocoon, maybe like a caterpillar, and it's getting ready to morph, metamorphose, and change the way that we see it right now. And there's just so much inherent value in the technology that there's no way that it's dead. Not a chance.
Well, see, for me, blockchain is, I mean, we know that blockchain is an immutable ledger. You can't go in, you can't edit it. Once it's there, it's there. If you want to make edits, it's just another block added on. But the original information is logged onto the blockchain. So when it comes to things like documentation, when it comes to tracking, copyright things, all of those things, where it comes to documentation, I think that is definitely where blockchain will remain and be sustainable. But when it comes to currency, I think that's a totally different animal because, as people begin to adopt it, I don't know that at this point blockchain is scalable. So something's got to change as far as that's concerned. Do you guys have thoughts on that?
What do you mean by you don't think it's scalable?
I think the way things are right now is that, okay, so you have something like Lightning Labs, Ripple, where you can do a whole bunch of transactions and they're really quick, all right? They've functioned that way, but it's still, they take that whole block of transactions and then they still put it on a block. That blockchain will eventually get very long and very hard to sustain with a whole bunch of nodes. So I think it's going to get to a point where it's almost like the size of Bitcoin, where you almost have to have enterprise level servers to maintain this. So how do you take something like that and scale it to money? I mean, I don't think that we'll ever have a global, like one currency that's going to work globally. But when it comes to blockchain itself, how do you sustain the growth of money, the adoption, and the speed of transactions and things like that? I mean, is that truly blockchain, or is that again going back to just, well, we can digitize it and we're just graduating from debit cards and cash to zeros and ones again?
Right, and that's all good questions. First, I hope to God we never go to one worldwide currency, because as a Christian, the Bible and the Quran and everything talks about that's no bueno. So
Right.
I agree with
Right.
you.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Right.
But the rest, you bring up some great points. Is this push for the centralized banking, and I mean, even what is it, the RBC, the Royal Bank of Canada, who has blocked their people from purchasing crypto with their debit and credit cards since January of this year. Then all of a sudden, there's this an about face kind of sort of yesterday or the day before, where they announced that they're getting into crypto. They're looking at opening their own exchange.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but is that it didn't mention blockchain. It just said they're opening their own exchange. Now, with it being a crypto, you have to, kind of take it with a thought that blockchain is going to be involved. But with the push to go digitalized, and it's going to be a matter of what's more efficient, and just like what you brought up, Meredith, the scalability. Is it long term? I think we're going to end up seeing like a half a dozen main currencies. You have Bitcoin, and then you're going to have like 5 altcoins that are the main ones that people around the world use. But Will blockchain still be a part of it? I think so, but who's to say what's to come next? I mean, we don't know. I mean, Satoshi Nakamoto came out with blockchain, kind of out of left field and changed the whole world. Um, we could be seeing, stuff built upon this, and we have to change our name in a couple of years from crypto to some Trader News or something else.
Yeah.
But the whole it's very exciting time is what I'm trying to get to, just because of what's been in the news the last couple of weeks. Sure, there's also negativity with the SEC and the freaking Congress and Facebook and Libra and yada yada yada, but there's a lot of positives. And there's, again, I foresee that blockchain is here to stay, but I think we are going to see an amalgamation of either new technology that comes along to enhance it, that can help, alleviate some of mainstream fears, make it more easy to integrate. Because right now, I mean, if I wanted to start accepting Bitcoin for the convenience store down the road, if they wanted to start accepting Bitcoin, they got to jump through some hoops. And we've got to be able to make it to where they can pick up the phone and say, "Hey, I want a card reader, like the credit card reader or whatever." Where they can just start accepting Bitcoin and making it to where I can hold up my watch and spend my ether for a can of soda. Not that I'm going to, but I could. It has to be that integration, and I don't know that we're anywhere near that. And I'm sorry, I got way off track there.
So my view is that there's two systems right now, right? There's the traditional banks and the legacy system that they use with regard to technology, processing transfers, cross-border transactions, and what else? Then we have the alternative system where you have cryptocurrencies and you are able to store value by buying Bitcoin, keeping it within your own wallet, keeping it within a hardware wallet, or keeping it within a software or hardware wallet. And there's those two systems, and the in regard to what you're talking about, and with transactions and the velocity of money, well, we're still figuring that issue out with transactions for Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? But the Lightning Network for Bitcoin and Raiden and other features and innovations should work for Ethereum, and they're slowly trying to transition, slowly build, slowly progress. So I'm not really worried about how it will progress for the other two because it's slowly happening. But in traditional banking, I think what's going to happen is that they're just going to integrate it in some form or fashion. They're not going to necessarily use the technology to run the entire system. To my knowledge, like JP Morgan just did a test with the Singaporean central bank to where they would go ahead and utilize blockchain to conduct cross-border transactions. So that's just one use case. So the thing is, as they're figuring out, and then I think J.P. Morgan did several tests, right? J.P. Morgan in the past worked with another firm to issue bonds via Ethereum. So the thing is, they're utilizing blockchain technology, but they're not necessarily disrupting or rapidly uh, shifting from their legacy systems to what they use to transfer funds, do wire payments, uh, accept the deposits, blah blah blah. No, they're just using the traditional legacy systems, probably incremental innovation, and they're using blockchain and testing it out on specific use cases. And as they see how it can go ahead and keep the same efficiency, same speed, same customer value, and improve it, then they'll go ahead and integrate it fully, I'm guessing, to other systems, to a wide variety of their systems, and replace their legacy system. So the thing is, I don't think the issue is more about how legacy will. I think the issue is more about how legacy will transform and what that looks like tomorrow. Because now the thing is, how is as you're digitizing, that means that's more and more data, more and more information that goes online about the individual. So one of the values that we have with that we prioritize or value with Bitcoin, Ethereum, Monero, is that they provide us with some sort of pseudonymity, and they provide us with censorship resistance. They provide us with other values that we don't find in the legacy system. So the whole idea is, how is the legacy system going to change to where it improves the value for the customer, but does it have any other drawbacks? What are we sacrificing in regard for the convenience that happens with the integration of new technologies? Like in China, you're seeing that slow progression to the social points, the social credit system, and you're having more and more um, authoritarianism. You're having all this privacy concerns, your censorship, all these different things over there. So it's like, and money is becoming a strong, the financial system is becoming a strong way to counteract, terrorism and other aspects. But the key questions is, as it progresses, what different sacrifices might the consumer have to make for added convenience, as we're seeing with tech, right? This is a large question that's continuously being coming up in various different actions. It's like the citizen versus the state, the citizen or the consumer versus the tech giant, consumers versus banking. There's all these different things in regard to privacy and tech. But I mean, I don't want to keep on talking. I just want to add these different, main viewpoints that I thought was really, really crucial and important.
Well, we're reaching the half an hour point, and I want to try and keep it as close to half an hour as possible. But I think one of the things that I would love to talk about with you guys is the idea that cryptocurrency was supposed to be peer-to-peer.
Right.
And we were supposed to keep government out of it. And here we are looking at government intervention, all of the restrictions and rules and, KYC, AML and all that stuff. And I understand that the safety in it, but as a responsible consumer myself, I don't want their intervention. I think that I'm responsible enough and, to take my money and do with it as I please, and I go by my own moral compass. Not everybody does. And I think that would be something that we should definitely expand on the next time. So why don't we close this up, because it's getting on half an hour, and maybe if you guys want to, Matt, if you want to just, close it up.
Yeah.
Some thoughts.
I just have one last quick thought too. You both brought up points with the KYC and more and more of our data being used or being involved, and the government stepping in and taking away the peer-to-peer aspect. And one big problem that I have with the KYC is that stuff is not stored on the blockchain. That is on a freaking server by the company. Those are going to be targets. And if those are breached, the amount of information, the amount of data that is going to be taken out of those could be catastrophic. And the government doesn't realize this. Data breaches happen all the time. We've seen it with Equifax. We've seen it with Target. We've seen it everywhere. And a data breach at this point would be totally on the government's shoulders, because they are the ones that dictated that we have to do this. And because otherwise, without KYC, there's no way for hackers to get our information. But anyway, guys, folks, this is something that we're going to do every other week, a live broadcast. On opposite weeks, we have our round table where Tony and Dennis join us. Generally, they're going to join us for these as well, but they just were unable to make it this week. If there's any topics that come up throughout the week that you'd like us to discuss, leave us a note below. Make sure you follow us so that you get alerts when we go on, and just meet us every Wednesday at the same time, 11 o'clock Central, give or take. 11 o'clock Eastern.
Eastern.
Yeah, give or take a couple of minutes for us to get rolling.
Yeah.
All right, thank y'all.
Thank you, everybody. Until next time.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. Bye.